Talk to the people, man. I know you want to shalom me.
Thank Christ bless. We out here in
Christ
Puerto
bless.
Rico for the grand opening, for the Passover, for the purging of all iniquity. All praise to the Most High, raising up the 12 tribes of Israel. Shalom.
Hold on, man. You got your son here?
Yeah.
What? Talk to the people, man.
Most High Christ bless.
Most High Christ bless. All praises.
He was sleeping. Most High Christ bless.
Most High Christ bless. Shalom, shalom, shalom.
Okay, this guy don't let up.
Yo, the Casa.
Passover 2025. What you got to say?
Listen, if you ain't in, you ain't in. God's gonna kill you.
Right.
What's up, bro? Hey, what's going on? It's so big. You finally passed me.
Yo, Gammy Gams, what's going on?
I guess I'll say shalom to these guys.
Oh, thank Christ bless.
I guess I'll say shalom. Hey, mijo. What's up?
See you, sir.
We gon' slide, write it down, take a picture with the prophets. We outside to the fathers and the brothers and the leaders that provide. Only thing they wanna see that people glory when it shines.
Pescado frito.
Pescado frito?
Yes, con tostones. I gotta look at the menu.
Oh, okay. What has it been, like a year since you've been back?
Yes.
In Puerto Rico?
A year. I think I have tres leches too.
Yeah, we gotta endure. Don't mind that exercise. To the pure, all is pure. My guard up all the time. You gotta push through the pain. Elijah showed me that the fruit comes after the rain. You gotta hold your head high. Make sure your candle always on fire. Let that light blind them when they see you walk by. Then let me see that confidence. Cause one thing about the truth, I guarantee you can't lie. Always do what's right and do it unapologetically. You know they probably talking about you, but that ain't upsetting me. Yeah, I think I'm all that. Yeah, the truth changed me. Fresh highlights and precepts in that Cambridge.
The corn. Saltitito?
It's like dulce y salado at the same time. You know, like salty and sweet.
Oh, it's vegetarian.
Yeah, it's just cornmeal.
What do you think, sis? What it tastes like? It's nasty? You don't like it. Yeah, what's this?
I grew up on these, so I like.
Oh, you did? Oh, okay.
No Captain Zephaniah for 16 years.
16 years. 16. How'd you meet him?
I met him through his sister. I was good friends with his sister.
Oh, okay. Like best friends?
No, just good friends.
Good friends, just good friends. So you asked about him? Or?
Wait, I'm gonna shine.
So was this
He
like?
asked about me.
Was this like high school? Oh, he asked about you. Oh, all right. Okay.
I knew his father before him. I knew his sister. I had met his cousins, some nieces, before I even knew Captain Zeph existed. And he saw pictures of me with his sister, and he asked about me a couple of times.
So that was 16 years ago. So that was like what? Was that like college time or something? Or what time period was that?
I was like 21.
You was what?
21, 22.
21, 22 years old? Oh, wow, okay. All right. Oh, that's crazy. How does it feel to be in Puerto Rico with your whole fam, Captain Zeph included?
It's beautiful. I'm excited. I'm excited for tomorrow's adventures. Not exactly sure where we're going. I think it's a plantation, but I'm excited about that. And for the boys to see, the history and myself as well.
Oh, okay. How was the beach?
The beach was nice. It was very nice. Hot. I got a little burn.
Yeah.
That's why I'm a little nervous if I'm all red.
It's been a long time since you been to the beach?
Yes. And this sun is different. It feels different than New York.
So you and Deacon, y'all got like drink sympathy, synchrony or something?
Yeah, you could say so.
Yeah? What's the drink called again?
This is a passion fruit mojito.
Passion fruit mojito. So you knew he was gonna get it, so you got it, or vice versa?
Well, that's my favorite. type of drink. So I'm always gonna get passion fruit, whatever it's on the menu. Passion fruit, I'm gonna get it. I'm
But he
trying to
got.
get
You don't
hers.
usually. You don't usually get passion fruit mojito.
Yeah, I think he learned that from me.
Ah.
Yeah.
Okay. So you got like barista skills,
Yeah.
low key.
No, we used to go to this Cuban restaurant in New York, and they made the best mojitos. So we expected it to taste the same, but
Okay, all right. Were you in Puerto Rico last year? Yeah, you were. You were in Puerto Rico last year. How was that?
very good. Different. It was only us. We were the only.
Oh, not the kids?
I mean, just us. Like there was no one else coming.
Oh,
from
like
other-
like sis one. Oh, sis one here. Oh,
Yeah, no, it was just one family. Was it Officer Helez? And I think that was it. So this
Gotcha.
year it's gonna be nice.
and so you and sis, you guys go way back, huh? I mean, obviously, right?
Yeah, day ones.
Way back.
Yes.
Wow.
Offered to sew fringes on my skirt.
Really? So how long ago was that?
2010. I think I came in 2010. Yeah. Oh, and I
So
just
15 years.
yes, and I just realized that Zephaniah May makes actually 17 years that I've known Zephaniah. Yeah, I forgot. Yeah, we came in 20 like Passover 2010.
Yeah, I know you really love him. You always post about him on Instagram.
Zeph? Yeah, that's my baby.
Really? All praises, all praises. So what's up with sis when in the Polaroid stuff?
Tell us about the camera.
I don't know what to do about it.
I know.
I
I
take
did.
pictures.
How'd you get into it?
I've been into it for a long time. Like my friend from Arizona, I saw her with like this really cheap kid camera from Five Below. So then I started looking for some, and I was like, I've always liked like these cameras. Then I looked like what they would use, and I asked my dad for it.
It's very artistic.
Okay. Well, I'm a professional, so you can ask me questions whenever you want. You know what I mean? I can do vintage stuff.
Yeah.
You ever been to Puerto Rico?
No,
How do you feel being in Puerto Rico, man?
You know what I kept thinking about?
nice, very hot.
Yeah, it is very hot, right? Compared to New York or Connecticut.
Yeah, I'm in Connecticut now.
Now, the beach that you went to, that was your first time going to the beach? Or you been to the beach before?
I've been to the beach before.
That was the first time? Oh, you have been to the beach?
Yeah.
Oh, all right. So how was it being back?
Nice.
I mean, I was
Cool.
going down. I know it's gone. Yeah.
Whatever
Yeah,
you
bro. I got teary-eyed, but when I
did you get in?
Yeah. There's a no swimming though.
literally, I said, now I gotta go back in the congregation.
Okay, no praises.
But I was able to like hold the water a little bit.
Yeah, you was playing with your brother? That's what- What's your guys' age difference?
Remember the countdown, man. I remember
3 years.
3 years? Are you going about 3 years?
I'm 11. He's 14.
Oh.
We on the way, we on the road. Now they traders trying to stop us, but they can't cause they know we on the road. No giving in, and we got a long way to go. No way. Gotta move, kingdom on the way. Oh, never care what haters gonna say. Oh, always gonna be up in your way. Oh, yeah. All you do is building up my faith. Oh, yeah.
¿Qué pasa con tanta caña? Ah, se fueron con los problemas. ¿Qué pasó? I don't know, you tell me that now, me dijiste eso ahora. Damn, I spoiled it for you. Shalom. How you been, man? Good.
Come on, listen, come on.
Oh, I thought you would have told them already. You alright? What's up, bro? You in the spirit? You sure? Yes, sir. Yeah? Alright.
We got a long way to go. We on the way, we on the road. Now these traders trying to stop us, but they can't cause they know we on.
Hey, Shalom Israel, Most High Christ blessed. Deacon Joshua here. Got my son Gamaliel. First day, a half day kind of, but here in San Juan, Puerto Rico. We're not just here for the Passover. Puerto Rico finally got their school up and together. So we're going to be opening up another IUIC sanctuary here in Puerto Rico. Today was more just kind of getting together, seeing some of the faces we haven't seen in a while, some of the brothers. As you see, some of us have our families with us. We're looking forward to keeping the feast Friday night. Tomorrow we're lined up. We got a lot of stuff. A lot of brothers came in today. Today's the travel day. Tomorrow we got some historical sites that we're gonna see. We're gonna go check out a plantation. Yes, there's plantations here in Puerto Rico. We're gonna give you guys some history on that as well. Probably get some insight into the fort called El Morro. All right, when the Spaniards came here and conquered, as well as we're gonna have some camp going on, and we also have a radio show in the evening as well. So a lot of activity ramping up, and as we prepare to bring in the Passover, we'll keep you updated. All right, this is day one down. Shalom, Most High Christ bless.
Yeah. Saviors. It's the album. A12. They ain't want to see us come together like this, man. Yeah. But you know we do it for the culture. The real culture. Hebrew music. Yeah. Yeah. I wasn't birthed in the truth, came into it as a young man. Started in the slums, raised our glass, now we toasting cheers. We give the truth to peers, feel like we talk to deaf ears. OG's been teaching years, know the Lord's message is clear. Babylon want me to sing a song, I'm holding strong. Who really war ready? We fighting till the kingdom come. Crown upon his head, we knew they wanted our king dead. How my own brother betrayed me when we done broke bread. Wow, we done broke bread.
Unprecedented events taking place right before our very eyes. Somebody get me a reader, we got a bleeder. I'm running things in Egypt like Zaphnath Phaneah. This ain't self-determination like Huji Chagalia. This is Edomite teeth at the bottom of my sneakers. This is bigger than the feature. It's weapons in the hands of God. We are the creatures. Amazing. We say
Like an estate,
Right,
but
right.
that's what they called plantations back then too. It's just plantation has a negative connotation.
Right.
So it means like an estate.
Once I found that out, I started looking for more haciendas in Puerto Rico. They got cacao, they got
I'm gonna
tobacco.
do you like she was doing me.
Huh?
Hacienda.
Thank you. I was gonna
Because we're doing the Burst of Babylon thing.
Right.
I know, but little does she know that Spanish is mostly Arabic.
Oh snap!
but
It's 30% Arabic still. They try to cleanse it.
Thanks, man.
Right. You know how they get with their Espanol. Oh, that the word hacienda, it literally translates into estate. And that's like a way, it's a word with less of a negative connotation, but they were literally plantations. Like where we're at here is a sugar plantation.
Right.
And we're trying to get a tour so we can get their perspective. We came here, I want to say 9-10 years ago almost. We didn't have as much of a following, I think, on YouTube and stuff yet. So I don't know. My spirit was for us to come back later as we've discovered more and we learn more. And they seem to want to highlight the preservation aspect of this particular terrain. And it was literally a sugar plantation is the point, right? And they use the word hacienda, which does mean loosely plantation, but the literal translation is estate. So if somebody's looking it up, it doesn't seem as
direct.
It's not so much direct. Like
Right.
it doesn't have such a negative connotation of the history of what a plantation in our mind, in the English-speaking mind, really stands for. So it's important to make that distinction. The other piece that I was saying briefly, and I guess we'll talk about it in more detail, is they try to frame it as they weren't really in chains when they were here. They were able to live on the outskirts, and when we get footage of what you see of it looks like a lot of open land, so it's deceptive because they're not cultivating it the way they used to. But this was all fields of sugar, and it was very much set up like the plantations were in the United States, which is the ones that are more known for the Southern Kingdom captivity, so-called blacks, the tribe of Judah. But what they fail to tell you is, I would say, is just like they had black codes before Jim Crow. That's kind of what was happening here. And they go to that part of the history, but not prior to that, dealing with the Spanish having come here and set this up. So they talk about more recent, going into the 1800s when things got a little more lax and loose. Even late 1800s, early 1900s, this was still operating, and they tend to focus on that aspect of this plantation and not the time when we were in captivity. But one thing of note is they had the people living, the servants, the slaves, on the outskirts, And I remember from last time we were here. So you don't tell me if this is captivity or not. They were paid a wage, but it was basically monopoly money. And what I mean by that is, it was coinage that had the figure of the plantation owner on it, right? Which I guess some long Spaniard name. We'll go look at it later. And the coinage was only be able to be used on the plantation. So they had a store here in the central, and they bought their essentials from here. So they kept everything in here. So it gave them an appearance of liberty, but the reality was is they were here. So, you know, the things that it's hard to find and to dig deeper on because of the denial of shackles and captivity, which is why we're trying to bring light to that more now, is that, you know, that's another form of captivity. They just give you the illusion of inclusion, and they set it up and framed it that way. But this was very much a chains and shackles plantation, and as things evolved and they became more progressive as a society, they still kept us in captivity, but it was without the chains, without the fear of escape at that point, because they created a structure where you felt comfortable. You know, they say a gift of the story of the heart. So in our minds, we were in captivity. I'll leave one last anecdote, or rather proverb, on this, right? Christ spoke in similitudes. The best way you can understand that is, if all you were used to was crackers, and now I put cheese on your cracker, you think you're on the come up, right? Now I give you access to water in your house instead of having to go to the river to plumb it. Instead of a shack, I gave you, you know, 4 walls and a roof. You feel like you're free, and in reality, they've just kind of expanded the cage that you're in and give you certain luxuries. So that's kind of the situation that you deal with here. And in a lot of these Northern Kingdom countries, it's almost like a slavery denial. But the Lord's bringing that history out more and more. And I think it's more here in the islands that you see that versus when we've been to Central and South America, because there's much more stronger awareness of that, and an awareness of the Catholic and Christian influence in those type of things. But, you know, that's one thing that it's important for us to never forget, because even in modern times, you go into the atrocities that the U.S. committed after 1898 and the end of the Spanish-American War, and they came in here, and they like to use different words. This is a commonwealth, but a commonwealth just amounts to a colony of the United States of America, and Puerto Rico's still in that status.
Deep to your point, when we were talking to the brother, he said that they're trying to reforest the plantation. So like you said, it doesn't look like a plantation anymore. They're bringing all that ecological stuff to reforest this, so you can't recognize it. That's crazy.
Right, and part of the reason that they're doing that is because the ground is so fertile here. I remember from last time when we were able to get the tour, it doesn't look like we're going to be able to get that now, so we'll do like our free work and what we recall from last time and things that we learn now. Is one of the things, and it's part of the blessings you read in Genesis 49, also in Deuteronomy 33 about Ephraim and the blessings from the dew and everything. The way the winds blow into here from the Canary Currents from the east, it brings all the storms. It comes in through the east of the island. And as you got those storms that come down through the mountains, it enriches the soil here. So this is what made it so lush and fertile to grow things like coffee, sugar. I was speaking with Captain Zeph at dinner last night, and I was telling him, whereas Southern Kingdom is most pronouncedly known for cotton, even though it was cotton and tobacco very heavily. We forget about tobacco when it comes to Southern Kingdom. When it came to Northern Kingdom, yes, we did do cotton with Judah in the United States, but when you deal with our captivities here, the heavy one, especially for Ephraim, was sugar. So we were so good at working the sugar plantations. They even, the book, The Flame of Resistance, talks about that. They shipped us to the Philippines and Hawaii to help develop the sugar plantations there also. So there's remnants of Ephraim in the Philippines and also in Hawaii as well, going back very deep from the time where they shipped us from here over there to deal with the sugar. The big one was sugar. And the reason I'm emphasizing sugar is I had done a show on the Power Hour, and maybe I run these things back. And it's also in the book War Against All Puerto Ricans, and it talks about the rise of what we know as Domino sugar, right? One of the most popular historic name brands of common table sugar. And the Domino Sugar Company has a strong influence from when the United States won the Spanish-American War, right? You read that in Daniel 7:8, how they plucked them up with one horn by the roots. That was getting rid of Spain, France, and Britain, right, from here during the Revolutionary War. And then the little wars and skirmishes they had afterwards to kind of get their influence out of here. And in what eventually became the United States from the remnants of Spain, France, and Britain. And what happened here was, as they removed the Spanish and they won the Spanish-American War, in I believe it's 1898 if I'm not mistaken, They came in and they capitalized. We were talking about the Jones Act, but they came in and they capitalized on that, and they put all their kind of, it's the cronyism, right? Look it up. Basically means that they're showing partiality to their friends, and these corporations came in, and the big one was sugar here, right? So yes, there was beans, there was coffee, it was tobacco somewhat, but tobacco was big in the mainland United States. And cacao is what they did here, but sugar's the big one, all right, and that's the one that they Ephraim was most expert in dealing with here.
This is La Hacienda Esperanza, all right? Behind me is the quote-unquote big house. This is where the slave master lived, and where we standing is where they produce sugar, all right? It's a sugar plantation. They had our people work in the fields, and it was very prominent, all right? It was so prominent that that's where you get Domino sugar, all right? For all of you who use that product, Domino sugar, it started here in Puerto Rico.
Hey, Shalom Israel, Most High Christ bless you. So we at the Hacienda de la Esperanza, all right, which basically just a plantation, all right. It was primarily a sugar plantation. We were trying to get a paid tour here so we can get their perspective on it. This is not the first time that we're here. I want to say close to 10 years ago, we did come out on one of our initial visits here. We had some brothers here. We still got a couple of them that are still with us, that were here with us from back then. But long story short, I just figured with the way things have moved, especially the way we're focusing on unity and what you're seeing, I mean, the sentiment has always been there, but it's much more overt now with the current administration in the United States. I thought it would be good to bring a more modern awareness to it, right? We also have more exposure, more of an influence online for people to see this. You still got a lot of knuckleheads out there where people talk about we were not in captivity, or things were different. You know, all the BS that you hear that's unsubstantiated, which really stems from the hatred, the vexation, from going back to the times of the split, right? So that's spiritual, and we understand that. But not just on the Southern Kingdom side, but on the Northern Kingdom as well, there's a lot of slavery denial. And one thing I do remember is that when we were here last time, they were very hesitant to talk about the history prior to when they were slaves here, right? I mean, you go all over the internet. You were just showing me, Officer Helez, something on the internet, and it's very clear the information that's out there. Helez posted a very good short that maybe we can work into this footage that we have here that talks about the history and chain of ownership of this plantation. They seem to emphasize here more when the chains were off, and we have another clip where I already spoke about that and how it was basically slavery, but similar to how it was under black codes and Jim Crow, just without the chains. But anyway, this is the Casa del Marques, right? And it tells you the conquistador that was the one that did here. He has his name here. Is what is it? Don José Ramón Demetrio Fernández y Martínez Marqués de la Esperanza. Big, long Spaniard name, okay? Descendants of the Spaniards that came here with Christopher Columbus from 1492 onward, okay? And he wound up settling this part of the island, and this was his estate. And this thing is huge. The part that we're on now is the only part where they still have preservation of these structures. And the reason I'm here on this sign is that it shows you the Conservation Society took this over in 1975. This is what this house looked like here. Later you'll see some footage of it, all right? This was the Marques house in 1930. So this was the plantation owner's house. They like to say Hacienda because it means estate and it sounds milder. But the emphasis that you got to realize here is that this was very much set up. You read in the scripture where it says Judah and Israel were oppressed together. And there's a lot of layers to that. But one of the things that you get from that as well is not only were we literally in the same fields together, all right, but we had similar captivities. They were just under seemingly different slave owners, but all they really had was different flags. It's the same descendancies, the conquistadors, the British, what was later called the Americas. Again, Daniel 7 and 8, our oppressors descended from Spain, France, Britain, and now what's called the United States today. So the Casa de Marques, it was hit by hurricane. They rebuilt it a little bit and preserved it. Later, we're going to go inside. You're going to see some of the instruments of the captivity that was here. And their emphasis here now is more ecological and the preservation of it, because it is quite beautiful, the land. I think it is, you know, you see these open green pastures, but the land's going to cry out to you if you're in the right spirit, and you know that all those sufferings and all those atrocities that we experienced, right? You've seen it in the slavery movies. Predominantly they show Southern Kingdom, but what you need to get out of this in these times of where we're trying to really bring awareness and unity of us being the same people, so-called blacks, Latinos, Native Indigenous, all right, is this is a plantation. We served in plantations, all right, and I'm sure we have some in Dominican Republic, Cuba as well, Haiti, and we're dealing with just Caribbean at that point. I think in Central and South America, we found there's much more awareness of that. But when you get out to these islands, there seems to be almost it's kind of like when someone's sick and doesn't want to accept the diagnosis, and they figure if they ignore the history of the slavery, that's going to bring something to them. Yet this day in their captivity, with this place still being a colony, there's a lot of mischief framed by laws like the Jones Act here and different aspects of things going on. But we're going to walk around, we're going to get different views so that you can see this. And what I want y'all to think about, Israel, when you look at this is literally, and this is just one example. Officer Helez was telling me he started looking up haciendas and he realized there's many out here on the island. All right, there's many out here, from cacao to cafe to azúcar, with sugar, right? So cacao being chocolate, you got coffee, sugar. You had tobacco even in some respect. But again, the most famous and popular was the sugar here in Puerto Rico. With the native indigenous, Columbus called them Taíno. They were known archaeologically as Arawaks. Here in the island, before Columbus named it Puerto Rico, it was called Borinquen, and they called themselves Boricuas. Okay, so there's a similarity here in the captivities, and it's high time that we realize these things on both sides of the southern and northern kingdom, and we got to come together because we suffer the same afflictions. Though we might have some differences by design of how they culturally took us somewhere else, because our captivity was under Spain, theirs was under Britain, but collectively it's the same people of the book. It was Esau and all those that were confederate with them in Psalms 83, and we're showing you and bringing you that awareness so that we know that when we bring out what we say in the scriptures, don't let no Christians, don't let no apologists, don't let any other historian try to tell you something different. We are the same people, we've suffered the same afflictions, and in that affliction is where we need to build our bonds and unity in these last days. All right, so we're going to continue on. Hey, so we're over here. We look like we got some remnants of a structure that they had here. Again, we lacked a tour guide. We weren't able to get one today. We were debating what this might be. Captain Zeph made a good point. I think this might have been due to the proximity to the plantation owner's house. This might be...
Captain Abiel made a better point.
What's his point?
That it's made of brick, so it can't be a slave quarters.
Possibly. It could be a slave quarters, being in proximity.
You're telling me it is.
Yeah, being in proximity to the house. I thought initially it might have been some storage for the cane or something like that. But I like what you said. Look at how close it is for the house and the shot that we're looking at here. This might have been where they kept some of the slaves.
Yeah, that would call it the overseers.
The overseers, maybe, perhaps, something to that effect, so that they can overlook all this, right? And then I think in the background out here, you see a lot more of the tropical aspect of what's going on back this way. This is all part of the hacienda. We're only in one segment of it, right?
How many acres was it?
I think it's 100 something. Do we know exactly, Officer Helez, what the acres are? So, this was the command, and then they kind of went out this way. So you see some modernization that they've did for preservation. This concrete probably wasn't here. You got some traps here for plumbing and things like that. None of that was set up that way, right? And then, we're going to head over to where they eventually brought in steam power here, where they processed the cane so that they could liquefy it and then dry it out into the processed sugar that they did. And we'll show that in a moment as well. So what you see behind me in the background, this is all part of, so you're going to see different footage on what we're segmenting here. All this back here is part of this plantation. We were doing the research, we looked it up. It's 2,150 acres. Now that's immense. I don't know if your mind could look that up. Maybe you want to look it up online and kind of see what that's equivalent to, all right? We're only in one small segment that I would say is a couple acres at most that we're going to walk through. But all through this, you can imagine then with sugar for miles, because if you're talking about 2,150 square acres, there's mileage involved in that. And all of this was all of that. You see some of these plantings that they have here, because again, they're more focused on ecological preservation at this point. It's almost like an afterthought that they include the plantation aspect of it. Again, the land being supremely fertile here. So they've also brought in some plant species that probably weren't necessarily native to here, but they thrive here because of how fertile this soil was for things like sugar to grow and process. And Esperanza, the slave owner, the plantation owner that was here, he made himself very wealthy, and through a marriage arrangement, this was the birth of the Domino Sugar Empire as well. So over here we're on the site of where they began to industrialize the plantation. This happened in the 19th century, which means the 1800s, right? More technology came out. They had refined their processes. So they had a steam-driven process here where they were able to process the cane more efficiently, all right? So it shows us here how the process started, how they would cut it up into pieces, press the liquid out, right? Heat it up, okay? And we're gonna show you some footage of the chimney stack that they had here, and this is what allowed the air to flow to keep it the fires burning so they can process more of this, right? Notice it calls this the Cuban industrial sites. There's a lot of overlap where they picked up techniques from each other. You're also going to see where they mentioned a Jamaican train. It's not a locomotive, but it's going to speak about the train process of how they became more efficient at processing the sugar once it was cut down and harvested. So while they did not have machinery, right, like tractors and such, they still relied on slave labor to do that. What they wound up having was a more efficient way to cut and process this, and we're going to show you some of the gear work and everything like that. And they've tried to reestablish some of this. Not all of it is original. They filled in. Definitely the chimney stack and components of the original building were here. And as they learned things from each other, they named it from where they got it. So they figured out efficiency in Cuba and how they worked, the dishes and the processing there. So they called them Cuban sites. Over here, it talks about the steam engine of the sugar, and how even with the sugar itself, for it to run, there was a byproduct of the sugar. All right, I think they say here what it was called, bagasse. And that bagasse would fuel what they called the Jamaican train, which was the steam engine, and the process of how they kept it going. So the process of the sugar was also there for them to help them fuel the machinery that kept it moving along. But again, none of it possible without the slaves harvesting the 2,150 acres of land that they had here, where they were processing it, transporting it here, and moving it through the machine process. And again, you can just imagine how hot this thing must have been as they were in there, because it's hot now. We're sweating here.
And steam.
Right? And this is some steam power, the heat that this thing must have given off. And they're here just kind of working, again, sun up, sun down, moving through this process. On the subject of critical race theory, all right, a lot of that then goes into what's taught here. And I wish I had some of the brothers who have been here a little more local, but so critical race theory goes into basically teaching the things that we've been talking about, right? The recognition of where our roots really come from, and it comes from slavery. Right. And there seems to be a lack of emphasis on that here. Again, in Central South America, I believe they even teach them that in the school system. The United States is trying to eliminate that, and this being a colony of the United States, they're very pleased with that aspect of not showing that sort of thing. You want to say something, Kevin?
I want to say, when you come to like places like Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, the way they separate the people is they say, oh, the Africans were slaves.
Yes.
And they don't include that the Taino were enslaved. Understand? And like you said earlier, if you're in the right spirit, you see the beautiful land that we have here, but we were made to serve these lands.
Right. The land should cry out to you if you look at this. You come, and if you come with the tourist mindset, you're looking at this, and it's breathtaking. I mean, it's beautiful, right? It's only 80-something.
Right.
And I'm hot and humid as hell. Now you imagine having to work all day from sun up to sundown in the cane fields, because sugar cane's not. You ever had a piece of cane that you try to cut down? That thing's not a light thing, right? It's not easy work. And they had to work from sun up to sundown in these conditions. No air conditioner when they were done at the end of the day, right? Given minimal access to things, just enough to sustain them enough to continue to work, right? It's like there's a ceiling, right? You give them enough of a leash where they feel free. You nourish them just enough to fulfill your obligation. And I don't know, when I come to these places, my initial thing is how beautiful it is. And I think of how peaceful it must have been prior to the arrival of our oppressors. And then I just think of all those atrocities that we know about, that you read in Bartolomé de las Casas, that you read in the annals of history, that you read in the journals of Columbus when he came here and where his mindset was, and how hospitable we were as a people, which is indicative of a lot of Northern Kingdom. Southern Kingdom does give credit to that, how the hospitality of Northern Kingdom. And we extended that same thing to these strangers in our ignorance.
Because, like you said, when you come here as a quote-unquote tourist, the natives here, the so-called Puerto Ricans, which are the tribe of Ephraim, They're very polite, hospitable, kind. You understand? And it brings to mind what Columbus said about the people here. He said, they're so nice, they're so hospitable, kind, that with 50 men, I can take over the whole island. You understand?
Right. And he said they would make good servants.
Right, they would make good servants. And he was actually right. You know, he turned us into slaves.
Right. And I want to go back to what you said. A lot of times, and it's not wrong, like we use the term Afro-Latino, right? But that does not mean Afro-Latino exclusively or Israel, right? You have to understand the dynamic of how the breeding happened. You read that in the book of Hosea from chapter 7 all the way through 9. And if you're in tune historically, you understand the prophecy that was there, which was for the Assyrian captivity, quite literally, but it was for now as well, all right? Because Hosea speaks about in chapter 2 that he would prophesy again and tell them, you are my people. That did not happen from the days of the split and the captivity, all right? That's in these last days. Yeah, I said that. It means Hosea is back in these last days, all right, to bring that out. But that history and that dynamic of how the breeding happened, all right, and I've gone over this as well. I'm not necessarily trying to plug the show as much as give you more resource to go back to, but check out the Power Hour Plus on IUIC Phoenix on YouTube. Look for some of the different historical lessons that we speak about. I think in recent weeks I've done that. I'm not sure when this will go out. But we spoke about that dynamic of the mixing, and they try to say, well, 60% of the island carries Spaniard DNA. So what, right? Remember, there's a remnant that's in there, all right? And the emphasis I gave on the show is, you're right, not everybody everywhere we go, just like not everybody in Africa is us, just like not everybody in parts of Europe, because we were taken to Europe in captivity, so remnants are there wherever we scattered. So there's some factuality to that. But this is why it's important that endless genealogies, that's not a discussion we need to look at. You start with who your father is, and then you go with how the sheep hear the voice.
By the Spirit, by the
right,
Spirit.
you try the Spirit by the Spirit. And if this resonates with you, if you can see the spiritual side of it and how that's paired with the historical aspect of what happened to the Tainos here, all right, the Ephraimites, the Borinquen, here in this island, and everywhere where we go preach this gospel in that regard, you're going to see yourself in the book, right? The scripture talks about bring their hearts back to the hearts of the fathers, right? And that started with Elijah in these last days, and you're seeing that now as we build on that same foundation. Christ said in Matthew, go and preach all nations, because he knew that we would be scattered. And we built first on Christ's foundation, and then the foundation of the apostles as that example. And that's what we're doing in these last days with the Acts of the Apostles, so we can bring this awareness back to our people. Because with that critical race theory, there's a denial of that. There's a denial of that lineage and that blood that's there. The influence of el blanquimiento, okay, which was the whitening of the races here in the Western Hemisphere by the Spaniards, is still very heavy in our people's minds. And there's a preference for that versus where your real roots are. And we got to bring that up, because in our watching, we watch for a nation that cannot help us till this day. And it's time that we come back together, all right?
Sure.
So we're up here. They put some scaffolding around to preserve this in a platform where we could look at some of the machinery. All right, this is the machinery. This is the steam engine. Of course, they painted it up for aesthetics. All right, all these gears were functional at one time. This is where they would press and squeeze and process the cane so they can get the liquid extracted out of it and get it prepped into the remnants of the building, which we're going to see, where they would wind up then processing it with the slave labor in the heat of this, and they would process it through the kilns and then run it through what they call the Jamaican train, which will show some footage of that. And it's really just an assembly line process of how they process this sugar here. So again, looking at the slavery, looking at the hard work, same captivity, same curses that we were under. Hey, so over here you got my son next to one of these the calderos. These are the big pots where they would boil it down. All right, so this would be on the assembly line. These things would get the heat. They're turned over now, but just so you can see how large they are. All right, you had my son there next to one. Okay, and this is where they would heat it up to liquefy what they pressed out. The goal being so that they can get the dry crystals, right? You got molasses. There's a lot that you get from the sugar cane, different syrups and things like that, and as well as what we most know as sugar, which is the crystallized form that you see here. Right, so no, don't go in, because we don't know how stable that is. So here we have the chimney, all right, that they did here for the airflow to keep the flames going. All right, they're preserving it as best they can. They've tried to support the structure here But this is the original structure that they built in the 1800s at that point to make the process more efficient for them to increase their wealth off our backs.
You said it was a man?
Yes, so they use oxen to start the machine, and these were the pressers. And then you see basically they have them kind of dressed all nice to make it look a certain way. But these were the slaves feeding this stuff in there. Don't let them fool you. These were not like employees that were looking for a certain gain. And they would feed it in through here so it could press it out and liquefy it. You see it here coming out in liquid form. And then everything was transported by manually and with oxes so that then they could take it through that process before they bought the steam mill in the late 1800s.
On that silhouette.
So what we saw on the silhouette, this is the physical representation of it, is what the oxes would move, right? And then they would feed the cane through here to press it.
That's all hand chiseled too. It's all one.
Yes. They would make this all by hand, or the slaves would.
Chiseling. What?
Yeah. So this is what you would get from the end processes of it. You know, so you would got the liquid that would come out of it, which is the molasses. You had the azúcar morena, which is the brown sugar. All right, and then what we most commonly know here. I know some people talk about, oh, well, the brown is healthier, whatever. No, it's just more processed. That's all, and not in the way that you think processed like Doritos. This is the color that it comes out in, and as they continue to refine it, you get here. And you see it today. You have the brown sugar, which is kind of still has some moisture that you got to keep moist, or else it dries up and clumps up. Azúcar morena, and then. This is what you look at like table sugar nowadays. And even this can get more refined into powdered sugar as you pulverize it down. And this was gold. This was gold. This was basically for them how they built their empires off our backs. You know, that amongst other things. Hey, so we have the plantation owner's house in the background here. We're down where the processing of the sugar happened over here. And you could see a lot of these plantation houses, I think of the movie Django, they were always high up that way. So when they would come out, they would come down the steps, but from the top, they could survey the whole land and make sure that all the slaves were working and functional. They got a high view of the whole property of what they could see from their eyesight from the house and make sure that things were going the way they wanted to according to plan. Oh, this is good. So go ahead. So you got this? Yeah. So this here is talking about how these were like handmade, like shawls. We call them paños, right? And one of the things, if you focus on the sign, this is one of the rare things where they acknowledge it here. It says, hechas por personas esclavizadas de Hacienda la Esperanza. So letting you know that these were handmade by slaves. Esclavizadas is slaves from the plantation. And one thing here, which I didn't have this fact in my head, it was in March 22nd, 1873, where it was declared that slavery was abolished here in Puerto Rico. And then this carried on under what was similar to what the black codes were, right? So up until 1873, the Spaniards had the indigenous here in captivity. This is a rare thing that you actually see them acknowledging that here. This is what we were speaking about earlier as we were going through things. A lot of times they're focused on the other aspects of it. Captain Zephyr was just saying, how come they don't leave some of the cane growing so we can see it? And they're more focused on, again, the ecological aspect of bringing in other type of plant life here. But, you know, after 1873 up until 1898, they were fighting with the United States, Spanish-American War, like I said, and they wound up coming in here and taking advantage. Again, War in Puerto Rico, The War Against All Puerto Ricans is a great book. It talks about the medical experiments they did on our women, the sterilization as well. They have the island of Vieques here in Puerto Rico, where they did nuclear testing in very close proximity to the mainland. You know, they say a lot of Puerto Ricans are crazy and bugged out. I'm gonna tell you why. It's because of all the stuff they did to us here. Again, the captivity is the same, man. And don't let anybody tell you that they were not in captivity. Don't let anybody tell you that so-called Latinos are not part of the 12 tribes of Israel. We fit the curses that's in the scriptures, all right? As a people, that's our identity. And we've showed you some of that here, and we got more to show, right? We're gonna hit the Slavery Museum as well. We're gonna have aspects to show you the forts that we served and helped build, all right? to get that level of history out and bring that identity. All right, this is to arm yourself, because people will kind of come and take that seed that's planted in you and say we were not in those conditions. And some of our own people have this delusion in their mind and that they never served in this type of captivity. But here we are in Puerto Rico, in one of the plantations. All right, that's the purpose of this visit, to show you that yes, there was plantations in these countries as well. And I would argue they were before the plantations of the most famous slave trade, which is what we know for the what they call the transatlantic, for the so-called African Americans, which are really the tribe of Judah and other tribes dispersed within them as well.
La esclava Reyes, propiedad de Marques, property of Marques. The slave Reyes, property of Marques, claims that she has the age to be free. The administrator told her que su partida de bautismo, her baptism, is false, and that she has to return to work.
Right, so
slave labor.
Well, notice what it says about the baptism.
Yeah.
That was the forced Christianity on all people. They had to accept that white Christ, they had to accept that white supremacist religion as a condition for their release after they abolished slavery in 1873. So in order for them to be considered free, they had to accept Christianity. And if they did not, they had to continue to serve hard bondage. You were going to keep bringing out that it speaks about the yokes of iron, right?
Right, this one right here. El esclavo segundo Medina reclama que él es el mayordomo, lo puso en el cepo y al día siguiente lo mandó a trabajo. He put him to work con argolla al cuello. So he had a yoke of iron around his neck.
Deuteronomy 28:48.
Arrastrando un pilón de hierro. So he was dragging a pylon of iron around his ankle.
So he had, remember, it says a yoke of iron and brass on the feet.
Right.
So it's letting you know that we did that. And when it says el esclavo, it's saying the slave, all right, Medina, right? So here we read about the slave Reyes, all right, the female that she was talking about, la esclava, the female slave. And they were saying that her baptism was false, so she could not get her liberty, all right? So this is why, although they declare these things and they make their declarations, they always make those treaties void. They did that. They're most known for that with Gad, but it was very typical of them. Sure, you want things in writing, you want assurances. Their word doesn't mean anything. Their word doesn't mean anything. But again, yokes of iron, that's a heavy point.
And this is Northern Kingdom. This is not Southern Kingdom.
Right.
All right, the names tell you who they were owned by, the Spaniards, the Reyes, Medinas. You got over here Jose Cirillo, who had the yoke of iron around his waist. So he had to drag a pylon of pilón around his waist in slavery. So they walked around with these cuerellos, paños
of complaints,
complaining about
basically their grievances.
Right, their grievances. But they were ignored until 1873.
Right.
When el día de abolición, day of abolition.
Right. But clearly this thing ran all the way until the 1930s. And like I said, Domino Sugar was built on it. They tried to legitimize it basically. When I say they, I'm talking about the United States, right? So it started under Spain and then the United States. You know, the Portuguese tried to come and they played a role in it, but they're basically Spaniards that speak a different language.
Right.
Their biggest claim to these lands is Brazil. And that goes into the difference between Hispanic and Latino. And I brought this out before. You don't want to use Hispanic, right? And a lot of times we've been accustomed to using that. Hispanic just means you descend from Spanish speaking or Spanish speaking places, right? So technically Brazilians wouldn't be considered Hispanic, but Latinos mean you derive from Latin America and the Caribbean. And that's why there's more emphasis in that, because when you say Latino, that goes into that critical race theory and that separation they try to do. When you say Hispanic, that can include non-Israelite races that speak Spanish, right? But Latinos are people that mean basically they're the descendants of the indigenous that were here, the survivors of the slave trade and the captivity under the white conquistadors. They're showing you the instruments of cruelty. These are the machetes that they had to use to cut the cane. Again, if you ever held a sugar cane, it's almost like bamboo in its texture and strength. And what you have here is all the different machetes that they used. These were the tools of the slave labor to cut the cane. We were talking about how they probably were barefoot or with chancletas, slippers, a lot of times. And you know, you got to cut the cane down to the base. You know, some of them were getting injured, things like that. But notice this one here. This one's very distinct. That's a Northern Kingdom, right, indigenous that was in captivity here. Look at the features, all right? And yes, the sisters, I was bringing out in Exodus the other day. It said the Israelite women were lively. A lot of times We just think that means they were energetic. Getting on the sisters, telling them, they're not lively anymore. Not to diminish anybody's work that they do now. All type of labor is tiresome. But these sisters, these Israelite sisters, were in the fields, all right, and they were using this. And here you have the markings on this machete. Let's come back to the machete here. You have these markings on this machete showing you. Look, so you got the head wrap. Look at the typical features of our people, all right, and it shows you the type of work that they were doing, cutting the cane fields as well, men and women in captivity.
The slave master wouldn't give them a long machete to cut the cane. They would give them short ones. Why? Because if they had long ones, they could use them as weapons. So they were always given these. The slave master usually had the long ones. But in order to injure somebody, you would have to get close.
You look at all this, right? Look at the multitude of this. I don't know if you get a wide shot of this. This reminds me in Deuteronomy 28 where it says you'll go out one way before them and flee 7 ways, right? You'll be smitten before them. And even with these smaller, shorter machetes, look at all the swords we had against them. And yet they had one slave master. They had taskmasters of our own people over them. And none of them had the spirit to rise up. I mean, there is a history where a portion of our people did, but the ones that maintained their lifestyle on these plantations, those are the ones that were smitten before the Lord put the spirit of fear on them against our slave masters, and they weren't able to rise up. There is another component of the history. We've been looking at shorts and bringing it out that we did have a rebellious culture and nature.
But to sustain it for centuries on end.
Yeah, and but don't get it twisted. There were parts of the island, especially out west, that they rebelled more strongly, the indigenous, and the Spanish were never able to get a foothold. They even say that the Spaniards were terrorized of some sects of the indigenous here, because though when Columbus came, we were very hospitable. I don't want to say necessarily docile, but we were taken unawares. They came, like you read in the curses, with from far, as swift as the eagle flieth, with a language that we did not understand. And by the time we realized what was happening and we did try to rise up, we were only really maintain a certain part of the island. That's why as we're here in the east side and northern side, it's much more touristic. You see much more of the Spanish influence. And if you go west and south more, I mean, Ponce de Leon did get to some of the south, but it's remained more kind of typical of what the island might have been like prior to the Spanish arrival. And again, you have to look at that point. On one side of it, you had some of us who were smitten before them. On another side, you had the different caciques that were rebellious against them. And the Spaniards wrote about them, and they literally told them we were terrorized of fear of how fiercely they defended some of these sections of the island. And they were never able to fully get that foothold. And even up until they started fighting the United States and the United States took over. And that's why the U.S. came in with their policies and they changed it up and how they dealt with it. Again, going back to the Monroe Doctrine and how they dealt here. And they gave them the appearance of liberty. They gave them the appearance, same thing like our Southern Kingdom brothers under Jim Crow laws and things like that. And they figured out ways to frame their mischief so that they still kept us in a form of slavery, even until this day. Hey, shalom. So as you come into the big house, all right, here in the plantation, La Hacienda, we got some different books and articles here that they show you of the captivity, right? I'm going to look at some of these and show you. This is some of them working. Okay, the plantation fields, right? You see some of our people there. All right, this is a more modernized picture. You don't see the yokes of iron, but we established with the paños that they did have them, right, in different ways. Some on the neck, some on the waist, some on the feet as well. All right, the yokes of iron. You see the different working in the field here. Here you got some as they're working in the fields here. This is more modernized, okay? This one's a little more antiquated. And you see us working here as well. All right. And I think we should get pictures of all of these, Asher, because as I keep going in here, you're seeing separate, different aspects. How many of you realize that this was Northern Kingdom? We've used this in different things. That's why, I get furious. My hairs are standing up now and I get emotional. That you actually got people there that try to say that we're not the people of the book. That Northern Kingdom has no part in what's going on here. Shame on you. Shame on you for your ignorance. Shame on you for continuing to perpetrate that white supremacist mentality and them lies. We want people. I get emotional seeing this because I lived under these lies for a long time. Look at these slave ships. You gonna tell us that we're not the Israelites? That we didn't suffer these things? I'm sorry. Tell me we not those people. And this is the stuff they try to deny about us. Look at the different slaveries. Here we have the slave rolls. It tells you they've started as young as 13 months for property. And you have the different ages of when many of our brothers and sisters went into slavery here, all right? From as early as 13 months, and then the age rolls go up, all right? It says it here, this is a register of the slaves. Obviously, there's a reproduction of what they had in handwriting, but they're trying to show you how they kept record of the property here, right? Right here, 13 months. Over here, it says 2 years, 4 or 5. So from the youth up, right? The scripture talks about in Sirach, the sons of Adam from the womb, right, have to face much affliction and much tribulation. There's a quite literal translation of that as you go through this. And you see that there. And then they would give them their birth certificates and show them what their owners were, right? So here it says the cedula. Today you hear that word quite a bit in all our Latin American countries. It's similar to what the Social Security number would be in the United States, but it's really just a serial number. And this was the serial number of this particular slave. Here it has the word propiedad. That means the property. And then they would write it in. So they had a template certificate for when the slaves were born. So born into captivity. That's the legacy of our people in these modern times under this oppressor. And it's hard to make out which was the owner here. But these are different artifacts that they've reproduced and try to preserve.
It's 1870 also.
There's an 1870, and we just established slavery was not on paper abolished till 1873 here in Puerto Rico. But showing you how they would register us and give us serial numbers, all right? And then you have here, these are different slave quarters that they kept us in. These were the ones that were damaged. And then here they wound up restoring it to some semblance here. So it was like barrack style where we would stay with each other. And there's so much more. You continue to look through these here. You have other certificates here, all right, of captivity. All these different registrations, all right. And you got more recreations and drawings here of all the captivity that we were in. Don't let nobody deceive you, brothers and sisters. We were in captivity too, and our history is identified with these things. This is good. Let's bring this out. So what we got here is another slave registry, and this one tells you of who the owner was. It was Jose R. Fernandez, one of the conquistadors. So anybody who has a last name Fernandez in these last days might descend from this particular guy, but it was also a common name, but it means any of these Spanish conquistadors. And these are the more grown ones of a slave register, all right? So you see the ages here, okay? And it tells you here, and look, and then it tells you their office that they're assigned to, right? So you have laborers, okay? So you have different manual laborers. Some of them didn't have offices assigned to them yet. So here you have 4 and 11. Some were too old, right? This one says 62. So they didn't really have an office for them, but they kept them as slaves. They didn't have official offices. And it tells you here, this one says maquinista, so he was a machinist. So that means he probably was one of the ones that worked the mills that we spoke about here, right? This one tells you domestico, so he was probably a house slave, right, or a woman, all right? And it tells you all the different laborers, and then also the ones, so by certain ages, they wouldn't put them necessarily to work in the field. So example 7 here might have been too young, that's why he didn't have an office. But once they got to the age of like 10, 11, 12, they put them in the fields to work. And this is some of the stocks for punishment. And you know, you want to worship a Christian religion. Look at the crosses they had here. Christianity is a bloody religion. And these were the stocks for punishment that they would put them in front of a cross, in front of their God, justifying it. And you know, much like you read in the slave Bibles that they had in the United States, same thing here. You know, Spanish is not our native tongue. We had our own tongue. We learned enough Spanish and picked it up to deal with them here. But at the same time, any version of the Bible that they did give us in Christianity, they would omit certain verses that would make us look to identify our liberation. So things like Deuteronomy 28, things like Psalms 149, that would speak about the vengeance and the honor that we would get and being able to revenge ourselves against these people. And make it very clear, no way, no how are we going to rise up against any power in these last days physically. That's not the portion that the Lord gave us. And what I mean is that our warfare is spiritual. They got nukes, they got jets, they got organized armies and infantry. Nobody's going to create any type of rebellion or commit any type of acts of violence in that regard. Our patience is to teach this word, bring this history to our people, and most importantly, apply these commandments in the faith of our Savior Christ, the Black Messiah, all right? Because his people have been afflicted. We are disenfranchised. The Most High has been long-suffering, and he's going to revenge our people. You got to believe that hope. It's going to happen under him, under Christ and the angels, and that day will come, but only if we get together and we gather ourselves in these things.
That's a Spaniard right there. It's the picture of him.
Wow, that's the guy.
Yeah.
Look at that. You can just take a picture of that, show the owner of this plantation. That's him right there. Yeah.
Excelentísimo Jose Ramon Fernandez.
He was the owner of all that shit. That was the slave owner. Book of Jeremiah, chapter 50, and verse 33. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, the children of Israel and the children of Judah were oppressed together.
I want to show you something here as we read that verse in the scripture. And again, the scripture has more than one meaning. It's for then and it's for now. A lot of people will say that happened. We wound up going oppressed together under Babylon and all the subsequent captivities. But even in these modern times, in these last days, you see that one thing here in these registrations for these rolls, they knew where we were from. And here you have the descendancy, the lineage, and the A symbolized African slave, and PR meant they were born here in PR. So they did bring, we got reunited in captivity, oppressed together. Here you see African, here you see Puerto Rican, African, Puerto Rican, Puerto Rican. We worked captivity together, brothers and sisters, especially you Southern Kingdom, right? With that vexation, we got to stop looking at things that way. They even knew who was single and who was married, right? They told you here. And a lot of them were single. They try to prevent the union of households unless it was to their benefit for breeding, right? You read that in Joel 3, I believe, and it speaks about the sort of boy for a harlot. So they would have certain ones that they would make as breeders. They would allow them to marry based on selectiveness to breed the slaves so that they could have good stock in what they would do. So, a lot of people talk about, oh, well, those are children of Spaniards, and it's not all color-based, right? Not even necessarily feature-based, but you got to realize that we serve the oppression together. You don't think that they made it, Southern Kingdom with Northern Kingdom and vice versa, right? So, I always mess with Judah. You all can't be Judah, a lot of Judah. You all can't be Judah. Some of you might be Ephraim too, man, looking at this here, right? And some Ephraim might be Judah as well.
That's where you got slaves like Carlos Delgado, guys like 6'4", dark skin, he's a baseball player. You got Roberto Clemente, Reggie Jackson.
Oh, even modern time. Look at Bernie Williams, right? He was Puerto Rican, right? Ephraim as well. You look at him, super dark skin, woolly hair as well, right?
You know who flies under the radar? Reggie Jackson.
Reggie Jackson as well, right?
He's not
Ephraim. Yeah, right. He was Ephraim. His pops was Ephraim, and his mom's was South American, I think, right? I have brought it up the other day when Bishop was talking about it, and I sent it to the brothers, and I said, Reggie, so he talks and moves like Judah, but he's Ephraim through and through.
They got interviews of him in Spanish where he's solely speaking.
So, and he speaks it as well, but he has that. I mean, they say Judah swag, but it's really Israel swag, and that's how I roll. It just depends on where you were from. Hey, I noticed you got some other ones here as well.
Yes.
We've used some of this in our teaching, and it goes to show you. Look, again, yokes of iron, all right? You got more registrations here. This one, right? They understand the different slave trades of where they brought, right? So, remember, I have the rolls here that shows African and Puerto Rican, and it shows you they knew because, there was a lot of genocide. There's a book called American Holocaust that talks about how they decimated things over here on this side of the earth. And what wound up happening is they needed to restock their supplies with slaves. And a lot of this happened in the late 1800s, right? Early 1800s. It tells you here the different timelines. So starting in 1792, they started to heavily bring to what we know as the Caribbean and Central and South America or Latin America a lot more slaves, right? You had remnants of Ephraim and Northern Kingdom that was still in Africa that they brought, and they also brought Southern Kingdom back over. And there you go, Israel getting reunited. So, you know, people try to say, no, they're all Spaniards. They talk about that critical race theory, and they try to say the Spaniard blood. And that's what the Bible tells you in these last days. Endless genealogies are pointless. What you have to look at is the identity of the slave trade. And again, Christ said, my sheep hear my voice. This is going to resonate with the people that it needs to. And they're going to repent. And they're going to have a passion and a fire for this truth in their people. And they're going to put in this work and bring this awareness. All right?
So this is implements that are used by the slave traders.
Right,
Meaning,
they call them implements, meaning chains.
correct, equipment that were used by the slave master, right? It says, by permission of British and foreign anti-slavery society. It says the yoke or gory, chains used to fasten slaves, iron ring weld on the limb of a slave which had to be severed by a chisel in order to be removed. Fetters, iron collar, a helmet used for gagging slaves with pieces of iron to force tongue down. Corlash or whip made of rhinoceros hide.
Wow. Look at that, rhinoceros hide. Ephraim. They beat us with whips made out of our ensign. The rhino.
So here we got a document, all right, for those that say Northern Kingdom, tribe of Ephraim, quote unquote, so-called Puerto Ricans didn't go through slavery, right? This is a document that was in 1873 for the quote unquote abolishment of slavery, right? That's Article 1.
Hey, so what if there be an abolishment of slavery? That means we were in slavery, dummies.
So this is for the abolishment of slavery in the whole island of Puerto Rico. That was Article 1. But when you read Article 2, it says that those freed men had to serve 3 years of bondage or servitude to their slave masters. So it was basically slavery by another name. All right, and it goes to Psalms chapter 55 and verse 20, where this bastard Edomite kept no covenants with our people. They broke them. All right, so that includes the law of slavery.
So like Deke said, it was 2,100 acres at the plantation. So here at the height, right before slavery was abolished in 1870, you see the separation, what they used it for. There was 700 acres of sugarcane. For y'all that may not know, sugarcane is a grass. So sugarcane grows very close together. It's only like 6 inches apart. It's not like another crop where you got one here and another one a couple feet away. It's thick. So 700 acres of sugarcane. Imagine how many slaves had to harvest that. And we're not in a climate that has a winter, so it's year round. So sometimes you see with the machetes, they only got 300 machetes there. There ain't no way a slave is clearing 2 acres of sugar every year. That don't make no sense. That don't make no sense. And continually growing back. So they had to have more than just 300. And that's not including 1,000 acres for pasture. And another 600 with fruits and wooded areas. So it's crazy how large the industry was here. So this goes right back to Deuteronomy 28 and 16. Curse in the field. All this land doing slavery, slave labor, 600 acres, 300 slaves.